Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Saturday Morning D&D Show. My name is Jordan with a silent PH in the middle, and I am joined always by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucian, over at Sir Lucian Gaming. Say hello, sir.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend, and I can't wait to talk about some Dungeons and Dragons.
Welcome. This is episode 101. So if you were joining us last week, we had an extra long 100 episode. Where we answered questions, and we also started a giveaway. So unfortunately, the giveaway has ended because it only lasted like 5 or 6 days. But we are going to announce the winner on this show at the end of the show. So stay tuned, and we'll announce the winner. And if that winner doesn't email me back, then we will announce another winner later on. So it'll be great. But yeah, like I said, we're a D&D talk show podcast. We talk about all things Dungeons and Dragons and the other RPGs that we enjoy, which is funny that we were both like, let's have a D&D show. And then it's morphed into, let's have Jordan talk about Invisible Sun a lot and Forbidden Lands and Tales from the Loop and like, all this stuff. But so we kind of talk about all the things that we find interesting. There was a lot of news last week, Lucian. Not a ton of news this week, so we thought we'd still talk about the big explosive news that's happening from last week, which was I forgot the name of it, the Wild Mount.
Explorer's Guide to
Wildemount. And that is the campaign setting book for season 2 of Critical Role. The same planet, but a different continent. And they're going to have new, we haven't play tested any of these new things that they've been talking about, like the Chronomancer and all this other stuff. So feelings on that. Like, is this just like Matt says it's good and his word is God and we take that as holy scripture and we play the game and we're happy? Or are we anticipate, well, it's coming out in March. We're not going to get any play testing, are we?
No. And that's interesting that none of the UA articles had mentioned any piece of it, though we didn't really get, I don't think, any UA articles for the AC Inc. new mechanics or the Ravnica new mechanics, although maybe we did.
Ravnica, we got Spore Druid and we got things like that.
Yeah, maybe we did for that one. So.
The races, not so much. I have noticed that they don't play test races because I think races are just easier to design. They know that they're not going to break the game. Yeah, every bonus they have to have, we give them like something bad in return, you know. So kobolds have -2 strength or something like that. I think races are easier to design than classes, subclasses, I should say. But these are like complex subclasses, and every subclass that we've gotten has had some kind of UA article. And I don't know, I just thought it was interesting. Like I was thinking about that a lot this week. How you know, they said that Matt Mercer's been working on this for like, I want to say over a year, maybe longer. And he's doing a lot of writing in the world building aspect. So that makes sense that he spent so much time writing this and doing the world building aspects. But when you start throwing in new subclasses, new spells, new mechanics like that, and it's going to be like, I don't know if this will be Adventure League. It probably won't, but it's like official D&D stuff. Then I don't know, you kind of need to play test that. And are they secretly play testing it and they just don't want to like announce it?
The answer is yes.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
They did make a big, I saw several posts go out and several Reddit addresses and definitely on Twitter, they were saying, yes, guys, because apparently other people have raised this concern elsewhere. And they said that it has been not only play tested by Matt's team, because it is clear that when they did this product, Matt was allowed to choose a lot of the writers. Matt was allowed to choose a lot of the artists, and they worked with the Wizards of the Coast crew. But the Wizards of the Coast crew was more about the packaging and less about the writing of it.
Yeah.
And they let Matt kind of handle that with his team. But the play testing was done by Matt's team. And when it did get to Wizards of the Coast did internal testing with it also. The same vetting of it. Jeremy Crawford dived into all of the subclasses and made adjustments. If you can get a few kernels of more information if you watch the interview between James Heck and James, I was going to say it again wrong again, Intricasso?
James Intricasso, yeah.
Yeah, and on D&D Beyond, where they talk a little bit about, because he even says like it took him a year and a half to make the book start to finish, how the concept had come up, because James apparently was one of the writers and one of the main people that helped with the original book, the Tal'Dorei book.
Okay.
And so when Matt and Wizards of the Coast are going to do this next thing, they don't even know what they're going to do. Chris Perkins talks about they don't even know. They just bring Matt in, and they don't know if they're just going to bring Matt in to work on one of their worlds. They don't know if they're going to bring in Matt in and just do an adventure. They don't know, and they just know they want to work with him. They just want to have him part.
Is this Wizards or D&D Beyond?
Wizards. This is what Chris Perkins was saying when they brought him into the office. And then after they brought him into the office, they kind of started deciding Matt wanted to create the world that he's also streaming at the same time, because it's efficient for him schedule wise and workload wise to be doing, hey, I need this anyways, because I'm running this big giant show that everybody loves. It makes sense that if I'm writing the book about that and not something else, it's not as much work. It's still work, but maybe it's not as much work if they said, hey, Matt, take over Dark Sun for us and write us up, 5th edition's version of Dark Sun, because we really love what you do, which they would have done. Like if Matt would have said, I think I got the impression from that interview that it was like, if Matt said, hey, I want to do Spelljammer, they might have let him do Spelljammer.
Yeah.
He kind of had this, if you want to do something, we want to help you do it in Dungeons and Dragons. So, but it made sense that he tied it into the world that he's in now, and it makes sense, and everybody's out there. Okay, we got that. So, and it sounded interesting the way Chris talked about what their role was versus what Matt and his team's role was. And you got to hear from the writers of that and how there were 4 main writers, and that's why there's 4 main adventures that you from the 4 different areas. And Matt was very hands off in certain areas, and then very, just do your thing and really, really, and we know that's how he is. He's the type of person that's going to facilitate, lots of creatives. He's always rising other people up. He's never doing, hey, this is my way. And, everybody talks about that. Matt doesn't have a big ego.
There's the door, buddy. There's the door.
My way or the highway type thing. No.
Yeah.
So I think what it was a project that Wizards of the Coast really wanted to do with Matt and Matt himself, more even than, hey, let's bring the Critical Role team in and build something with the Critical Role team. It wasn't so much that. It was, let's bring Matt in, and we want to do something with Matt. And it happens to be Matt wants to also do his world. He's into it. They're in this new area. It could be a great book and a campaign. Let's do that. And they brought in 4 different writers. And it wasn't any of the cast that were extra writers or anything like that. So it is an interesting book. And I'm interested to get my hands on it. I'm interested to see where some of these subclasses came from, because he talks about like dunamancy and all these other things. And I thought it was interesting that it was a lot of words that we hadn't heard yet in Dungeons and Dragons. He wants to deal with potentiality, and they were always using these almost like quantum mechanic words. Like there's almost like a deeper science in there. And I was, in my mind, when I was listening to the interviews, I was thinking of, instead of quantum mechanics, we were getting like quantum fantasy, or we were getting fantasy mechanic or something, some combination of what happens when you take the weird and strange world of science and quantum mechanics, but you say there's magic's real in the world. What does magic do with weird and that kind of stuff? And that's what I think he was diving into. And I think like the dunamancy came from a Latin word where he was trying to, I think it has to do with something about potential or future or something like that. So he was really into kind of working around that concept throughout this book. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It made me want to get into it a little bit more, like especially the subclasses. I feel still that this will be a book that I only use for the additional rules that are in there. I don't know if I'm ever going to run a Wild Mount campaign. I don't know how many people are going to run the Wild Mount campaign, but I hope people do. So I don't know. I think it was really interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. So I don't watch Critical Role. I tried. I really did try.
I tried to watch it this week, and I couldn't do it.
It's so popular, and even the people I play D&D with love Critical Role, but and it's just a personal thing that the episodes are too long for my consumption. A weekly episode that is 3 to 4 hours long is it's just a lot, and I can't do it. And so catching up has become a burden as opposed to a fun thing that I want to do. That being said, I think it's really cool that Matt is able to do this. I don't know the world of Exandria that well, and I'm wondering, is this a little too fantasy cookie cutter? Like we have, like, if you think back to other campaign settings, you know, and actually WebDM did a really good video on Dark Sun this week, so you should go check that out.
Really
but
good.
It was one of those things where they were like, well, we have the Forgotten Realms, we have Greyhawk, we kind of have these like cookie cutter, like medieval fantasy areas. Let's make something completely different and change up a whole bunch of stuff. And then Dark Sun came out of that, you know, and you get these weird, like it's hostile and it's desert and there's no metal. Everything's made out of like insect cartilage and bone and things like that. And it was just like, I don't know, it was just, how do we make a really different world, but you can still use these mechanics of D&D in the thing. And so coming off of Eberron, like they just released a campaign setting book, and their official next book is a campaign setting book. And it just is it's kind of weird. And then we were talking like D&D Live, is this the book they're pushing for D&D Live? It's going to be like, hey, we've got this thing. And so I don't know, we've been talking a lot about, we as in like me and my friends and the internet and stuff, just about that dice set that was leaked on Amazon. And that has to correspond to a new book, because it got me thinking, like the Ravnica book came out with a dice set, and not, you know, and adventures usually come out with a dice set, like Tomb of Annihilation and things like that. But I think with this one, like Xanathars didn't come out with a dice set, but I get the sensation that that dice set is tying to a book where all this Unearthed Arcana that we've been testing is going to come out. And I don't know why they have decided to not announce it, or if it just was like, hey, we need to do more testing to finish it or something like that, and it's going to get pushed out. But the whole thing feels like we were building up to a really cool like announcement, and then Matt Mercer came in and was like, I'm making this book, which again is kind of like the Acquisitions Incorporated book, where they were going to kickstart that. Like Penny Arcade was like, hey, we want to make this book. I think we'll do a Kickstarter. And then Wizards said, well, why don't we produce it for you? And this kind of feels the same way, especially after listening to you. I haven't listened to all of the interviews. I'm a bad host of a D&D podcast. I haven't listened to all the D&D things. But you even said that they were like, well, we wanted to bring Matt in for something. And then Matt pitched this to them. And they were like, yeah, we'll do that. And it was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So this wasn't in like a huge grand plan either, which makes me think that there is something else that's coming and we just don't have it. But I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And I definitely, because they have to have at least, they're going to do 2 of their own books, I imagine, minimum this year. I mean, we got adventure or campaign setting books, like the ones we think of where it's like Baldur's Gate, Saltmarsh. What did we get last year? We got Baldur's Gate, Saltmarsh, that were all Forgotten Realms, but within their adventure set. We got Mad Mage was last year, right? Or was that the year before?
I don't know.
Yeah, I have to go back and look at the thing. But we get a lot of their stuff throughout the year. And it's not just like it's one book and we're done. And they throw in these other books from other things. So we got Rick and Morty's got thrown in at some point in the schedule. We got Eberron got thrown in some point in the schedule. We got Act Inc. thrown in. We got Ravnica thrown in. Those were all fit in. Those ones all feel like extra books besides their main line.
Yeah.
Those all feel like, to me, additional things. And this one feels additional, this Wildmount one. I do feel like they knew they were going to get some pushback because they just did a lot of PR stuff where there was just a lot more talk about, hey guys, we understand this is the new book. And if it's not your thing, if you're not a big Critical Role fan, don't worry. Yeah. There's plenty more books out there for you. You know, you don't have to burn internet down if this is the one you wanted.
Yeah.
So I think they kind of knew people were waiting for the next adventure, but we're announcing something they weren't ready for or had no idea was even coming. Like there's just no hint. I mean, why didn't they hint it just before the end of last year to say, hey, right at the end of last year, they could have said, very last show of Spoilers of the Swag, they could have said, hey, we're working with Matt on something super cool. Mm-hmm. And when we come back from Christmas vacation, we're going to tell you what we've been working with Matt when we get back.
Yeah.
And that would have set up everything to say, oh, okay. So when they came out with the announcement, we would have said, oh, that makes sense. They said they were working with something with Matt. Here's the thing they've been working with. That's great. But they didn't do that. They didn't set any expectation. So they let their audience's expectation run wild. And of course, it wasn't exactly what we wanted because we had no hint. We had nothing pushed our expectation one way or the other to help guide it. They just let it go. And I felt like that's kind of a misstep for them. And it also feels like...
Is it that company's, like, is it their responsibility to rein in our fandom? I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess there's some pushback now, but, like, I'm just thinking, like, they didn't, I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess they didn't leak one way or the other that it was going to be anything else other than Unearthed Arcana, I guess. And now we're all speculating that there's another thing, but like, I don't know.
All their storylines have leaks. They'll put out some artwork. Like when before we knew anything about Descent to Avernus, we got the cool artwork and we got to see Zuriel and we got to start moving our minds in that direction. So when the real announcement came out, it made sense to us. Like nobody said, "Oh my God, why are we doing Baldur's Gate?" You know,
they were doing like lore you should know about Baldur's Gate and things like that. No, you're absolutely right. Actually, now that I think about it, and we even like when my channel was really new, when Tomb of Annihilation was coming out, we all figured out that it was Chult, and Jordan made a whole Chult video on launch day release, you know, because it was like, all of us like internet people, we kind of just figured it out. And so you're right. Yeah. But this
and
was
you didn't
very
know it was going to be like
a
redone of Tomb of Annihilation, but you knew, like you said, Chult, and we knew that, we might be going back to the jungle and all right, we're going to get this great adventure. What's it going to have us do? And then we find out, okay, it's a redo of, that, and we're okay with that. So I think anything when you're working with your customers, if you can help with expectations, then they don't go to places that you're not expecting. Like they're not expecting them to build a car, and when we don't get a car from them, there's like, but we thought you were building us a car, Elon Musk or whatever,
it's a toaster.
This is what we're doing.
But it doesn't have any wheels, but it makes toast. And
And then the other thing that seems weird to me, kind of adding on to that last point, is it feels like these side projects get about a month of push, and then they're just kind of thrown to the wayside to bring in whatever the next thing is, to the main storyline or the main thing that they're running, and that'll get a 3 or 4 month push. But these Eberron got like a middle of November release with barely any real supporting videos to it until this past month or so. We got some more finally, and then that was it. We didn't get a ton of push for Eberron. We didn't get a live event. We didn't get big streaming events from D&D. We got some other people that were doing streaming of it, but they weren't pushing it, and they weren't really making it, hey, this is the next big thing. Same with AC Inc. They just put the book out. They talked about it for the month that it released, and that was about it. They said it was coming, but they didn't really do anything. They didn't run a live event for it. They didn't run it, like even just streaming events from their own studios, because they have 3 or 4 studios that they can stream shows from all the time. It feels like they're not giving enough time to these other products that they're working with. The Stranger Things, we got a little bit. We got Rick and Morty. There's a little bit to it, but it wasn't a lot. It doesn't feel like they're really pushing it.
I think they're pushing the main storylines because that's what they've decided to push. And these other things feel like extra. But you start talking about like Stranger Things and Rick and Morty. Those are not designed to be these big things. Those are designed to worm their way into existing fandoms. So Stranger Thing fans are just like, oh, cool, I can get this D&D thing, and like collectors and stuff. So I don't know, but I don't know.
So, which means we're here in 2020. It's January 25th. We're about to be out of January, and we don't know what the main storyline is. We don't know anything about their main thing. They've not given us a hint. They've not given us a screenshot. They've not said anything. So here we are, already a month into the next year, and we don't know what their main product is. No, it's crazy.
Game over, man. Game over.
And what it's doing, I think, is allowing other games to catch ground on them. I feel like Pathfinder is making a big push right now. I've been seeing a lot more news about Pathfinder. When I went over to Roll20 and I was looking at games you could join, because I was trying to find, let's see if there's a campaign out there I wanted to try on a game system I'm not playing so I can kind of learn it. And I figure I'd go, and they host those over on Roll20. Lots and lots of Pathfinder games on Roll20 right now, tons of them. And there's plenty of 5e, there's plenty of some other stuff going on, but I was surprised at the number of Pathfinder. So I think there's a slow resurgence of these other gaming systems getting a chance, because Dungeons and Dragons is not giving us the big thing that we want, or the big next thing. So it's allowing us to kind of wander around and look at other stuff. So,
which isn't bad, but
no,
but like, I guess I see your point. I don't think that's necessarily bad. Like, I think everybody should play a bunch of other games. But whenever they do drop that Unearthed Arcana, like, bombshell book, I think that's going to make everybody swing back over. But we'll see. But it got me also thinking, like, a lot of people on Twitter and the internet say sorry, I want to back up. So the DM's Guild is on fire right now. Like, it is doing so well, and it's so cool. And I was perusing it the other day, and occasionally people contact me and they're like, hey, I made this like supplement. Can I send it to you? Maybe you can talk about it on your YouTube channel or the Saturday morning D&D show. And I'm like, okay, sure. And people have been sending me a couple stuff here and there. And perusing it and going through it, I was like, some of these sound really awesome. And I've been picking up quite a few here and there. But I wanted to talk about that. I saw a tweet that somebody said, if you don't like the books that are coming out of Wizards of the Coast, look to the DM's Guild. And if you don't like that, write it yourself, because there's nothing stopping us. And like, going to the DM's Guild today, there was just released a Calimshan Adventurer's Guide that's got like, how do you play in Calimshan in the Forgotten Realms? And it's got all of these backgrounds and magic items and nothing like really crazy, no new classes and stuff like that. But if you want to use that at your home table, you certainly can. Another great one I saw was Faiths of the Forgotten Realms 2. And I own Faiths of the Forgotten Realms 1. And really enjoyed that book. If you like Eberron, I had these people sent me a copy of their book called Eberron: A Pocket Guide to the World, and you can like go and it's just like, I don't know, like zoom in on a section of Eberron and you can research a whole bunch. So I don't know, there's just cool stuff going on the DM's Guild. So I wanted to like emphasize that, because we're not trying to be like, oh, Wizards of the Coast, you're not doing what we want to do. Like we have the tool sets to really go out and do whatever we want and make whatever we want. And before the Artificer was out in Eberron, I think there were like a dozen Artificers you could get on the DM's Guild or for free on the internet, because people were workshopping the Artificer because they like it and things like that. So I don't know. It's just kind of like, there's lots of really cool stuff out there on the DM's Guild. So
and even just the third-party companies that are building 5e stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff
Cook,
out there.
I'm really excited for that Numenera. That Numenera supplement for D&D 5e.
Yeah, but even Cobalt Press's stuff that they've been putting out. Third Eye Games. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that I saw. Just all these different people that are doing some 5e adjacent things, or 5e campaigns or classes, or all this stuff that's out there. I think you can get it if you want it. I definitely agree. And even our complaining tone of talking about, like you said, what Wizards is doing now isn't, I love the company. I'm going to buy everything they put out. They get my money every single time. I can't wait to see what the next thing is. That's all it is. It's just, I can't wait to see what the next thing is. I'm into it. And I hope they do something different. And I hope they bring back some of these other worlds.
And like,
it was very interesting.
And I feel like I'm really being hard on Critical Role, and I'm not trying to be.
Yeah.
So I want to emphasize that.
It's because you're a hater, Jordan.
Your opinions can change, and I enjoy them when I am wrong. And case in point, the Ravnica book came out, and I'm like, no, thank you. And then parents' sister of mine was like, what do you want for Christmas? I'm like, I don't know, maybe this Ravnica book. I'll see what it's all about. Read it cover to cover, and I'm like, this is awesome. And even though I still don't necessarily want to run a game in Ravnica, the monsters that I stole, some of the scenarios and situations, some of the like fighting, like I'm like, oh no, that like just the conflict that these two houses have. I don't remember what they're called specifically. Guilds. Sorry, it is guild. These two guilds have with each other. That would be really interesting to take over here. And I like that the Undercity is this like sludgy spore area that this guild hangs out in, things like that. So really, I was wrong about that book. Like, I think it's a very well-made book, and I really enjoyed Ravnica. Still not going to play a Ravnica game. Now, the same thing with Wildmount. I'm probably not going to run a Critical Role game because I'm not a huge fan of Critical Role, but there's going to be a ton of stuff in there that I'm going to take because Matt is an excellent writer, and he knows the game, and he's really good, and I think I'm curious to see what he brings to the table, like as far as this and design wise and things like that. And you get inspired by everything. And that could even be said by Wizards of the Coast books. Like I bought Descent into Avernus and I'm like, I'm probably not going to run it, but I bought it because I wanted all of the cool mechanics to eventually run my Mad Max game of D&D in the desert with like, I think it's the Hell Rider things, and I wanted to use all of the engines and the cars and stuff that run on soul coins, and so cool stuff. So that was a talk. We talked about all that. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about, or what do you want?
They did do Dragon Plus. And so Jeremy dove into a little bit more of the classes, the UA article that was out right now that was talking about some of those classes. And one of the things he said, and I always like this, I wish that video he did came out just before they released the UA article, so you could watch that and then you can say, oh, and at the end of the show, here's the UA article that we're talking about, because then you can go to it, because it almost would frame kind of your idea of where they were thinking, and now you can look at what they were thinking about, and this is the result. And one of the things, like the monk one, I noticed a lot of people said, well, the monk doesn't, the path of mercy doesn't really, interest me, and we've got plenty of clerics, we've got plenty of healing. What's the point? But what Jeremy was saying is that one of the things they wanted to explore was this idea of a European style monk, because all of the monks that they create now are very Eastern style, very Asian themed monks is like the only karate, way. But that's not the only type of monk there was. Monk is a very broad word, and they wanted to explore the non-Eastern style of monk. What was the friars and all these other types of monks that you would have gotten, and what would that look like? And taking it from that context, that made me think, oh, that's a very interesting way to think about it. But they also went into like the plague doctor people, the people that would go around into these plague-ridden cities, and they would either try to help a person, but if they were too far gone, they would end them and get this person out of here, because we got to clean this corruption up. And they might be wearing those cool plague doctor masks and things that you would have seen. And so you get a very different style monk in that version than you do from anything else that we might have imagined before. So I liked hearing that, and I thought, oh, now that makes it more interesting. And it would be something that I would be interested in trying to play, or role play that style of a character. Somebody who spent a lot of their time in a disease-ridden city trying to help it, but just it's a terrible thing to try to do when you don't have, when the magics aren't working, and what would that even be? Could the plague even spread in a Forgotten Realms city at this point? Could Waterdeep be overtaken by some type of, black plague that's being transmitted by rats, but nobody understands it because we don't really have science. We have magic people and adventurers. How are they going to figure out that that's what it's the fleas on the rats that are doing it type thing? So it'd be very interesting. So I liked how he talked about that. I loved how he talked about the people were saying, well, you have the kind of this beast barbarian, but isn't that like the totem one? And he talked about, well, the totem one is about internal power, and this other one's about transformation, about changing into something different. And that's where the lycanthropy comes from, and that you were possibly a werewolf in this idea. So I love hearing their ideas on what they were thinking when they said, okay, this is the concept we want to explore for a subclass, and they give it to a writer. And a lot of these they gave to Dan Dillon. They said, this is what I want to explore. Give us something that has to do with lots of body transformation, or give us something that has to do with European monk, or give us something that has to do with whatever all the other ones, the Watcher of the Way of the Watchers. What does that look like if you're only trying to keep an eye out for aberrations that are trying to break into our world? And who makes
I had an idea for a subclass called Way of the Weight Watchers, where you had to take in so many calories a day. And and also I'm going to point out, you were talking about like plagues and stuff, and I think everybody here remembers the Wailing Death, the plague in Neverwinter in 1372 that started in Beggar's Nest and spread out, and you the adventurer had to go and solve that magical disease.
Yeah, and magic just wouldn't cure it automatically, right?
Yeah, and everybody was getting sick. It was bad news.
So there you go. So that's perfect. That
Neverwinter Nights. I love you.
So go watch that if you didn't watch it. I think it's very interesting to always see what their mindset is when they're creating a class. And I think it helps inform you when you think about the class and you say, what do I like about it? Do I think it'd fit in my campaign? If you know where the kernel of the idea came from, what were they trying to do? Right. And if you're going to give them feedback, you can say, oh, well, you were trying to make a European monk, and this is the words you gave us to do that. It might be better if you change this to this. That would be more of the feel you were looking for.
Right.
Because we know what they were trying to go for. So I like watching that, getting an understanding of where Jeremy was and his crew were sitting, and then said, okay, now I can give some ideas to it. So and
there were some people in YouTube chat that were saying, it won't feel like a European monk if you have key points. And so that's great feedback to give them. Like, can you reflavor these key points into like something else? So you're not like, channeling your inner whatever, but you're instead calling upon a god or something like that. But same math, same kind of mechanics, but like you need to change it up somehow. And that's the feedback that they want. So, or Wizards of the Coast, watch our show, and in the chat, you can just pick all the really good chats out.
You can send all your UA articles to us for testing for sure before you put them out, just so we can do just a once over. I'm sure they will. But so that was the news. I think those are the big things that are out, like you said, and we're all looking forward to that. We've got till March at this point, so we're only 2 months away for release from Wildmount. I'm not sure when we'll hear the next release of whatever's coming out. We know the dice set is already out. I did see Beatles and Grimm did their special edition of, I want to say Eberron. They're putting out a special edition box set for Eberron, a big expensive one like they've been doing for some of the other adventure sets, which is cool. So I'm excited. I'm excited to kind of see but I still feel like we don't know what Wizards is doing for 2020.
Yeah.
We know the Wildmount book's coming out, but what's Wizards doing for 2020 is what I'm interested in seeing now and where we're going to go. So,
all right.
But that usually leads us into our Bardic inspiration. It looked like Jordan had one in there, which is awesome.
What?
Jordan had an inspiration this week.
My inspiration was, I think it was 6 a.m. I was like, baby, go to bed. I'm still tired. I don't know why you're awake. And I was scrolling through Reddit, or maybe it was Instagram or something. Follow me on Instagram, Jordan. Anyway, but there was, somebody had posted like, how do you role play a suit of armor controlled by a swarm of bees? And I just loved that monster. And so I was thinking like, what if you, so my Bardic inspiration is really like sentient swarms of stuff. Mm-hmm. And that, you would have like, how do you like, I don't know, brain is going a mile a minute right now, but a swarm of bees can be taken out with things like fireball and all this other stuff. But what if they learn to protect themselves and they swarm into armor, or they swarm into clothing, or they're trying to like pass themselves off as human, but they're not human. And so they're like walking really weird. And you're like, so that was, I don't know. I want to bounce ideas off you, Lucian. Like, what if you go into a town and everybody's walking around and acting really weird, and they talk in like a weird buzzing voice, and you're like, this is odd. And it turns out the entire town is just full of like bee people. I don't know.
I like that. I like the idea of, like you said, sentient swarm.
Yeah.
So it's like swarm minds that probably have a way, because there's so many of them, and they can connect and they can use each other's resources to become smarter than the individual. So like the individual bee is not as smart, has a very limited amount. But now when you get 10,000 of them together, that smart is 10,000 times more smart. And now they can move around. Like you said, they can cast spells, they can build buildings, they can do whatever they want. And they figured out how to do this. And then you add in, which is really, you just said the next cool thing is, it's not just one big swarm that does all of it, which is what most stories do. It's this swarm is this group, and there's this swarm and this swarm and this swarm, and they all coexist in some type of civilization because they've all reached a higher, sentience, and they cooperate with each other. They're not adversarial; they're cooperative. So you have the honeybee suit of armor, and you have the wasp suit of armor, and you have the all these different, or it could be anything, the ants, or whatever. And so that brings in all those kinds of cool things where you talk about some type of swarm that turns into a bipedal creature of some sort, mimics things, beetles, and you could
cranium rats kind of do this. Somebody was people were pointing out in the things that is exactly what a cranium rat is. But and I also watched a Kurtzgard, I think it's a YouTuber, and he did I find ants very interesting, and he did a video on ants. And I didn't know this, but the ants of Africa evolved in such a way that they were fighting with each other constantly. So when one ant population got too big, they would spread a little too thin and the others would take over. And so it was always this balance of these different ant colonies. But when the ants came over to the United States, there was no other ant colony to stop them. So they grew and grew and grew and grew. And we have basically like 2 or 3 different types of ants in the US. And they're all kind of like friendly with each other in a way. And it changed the ecosystem a whole bunch. And I don't know, you do something like that. Like you have all these, I don't know, you're in the Feywild and there's all these different kind of bees, but the minute those bees get to Faerun, they're going everywhere, and it's up to you adventurers to stop them because they're like ghost towns that are just abuzz with the dead. I don't know.
Yeah. Or imagine the cool things you could do if you were the player character that was that.
You were like, I'm actually it's 3 halflings in a trench coat kind of a thing.
Yeah. So you can talk with a buzz all the time.
I think I need to make an NPC that's like that for my upcoming game. It'll be like, oh yeah, I was actually bees the whole time, and it just like
God, yeah. And then somebody said in chat, undead bees. Then we get undead bees. We get vampire and werewolf bees.
Hell yeah.
We get the whole gamut. I love it. I love that kind of. That would be an interesting campaign world, or something to set into your campaign world to turn it on its head.
Yeah.
Because your players would never expect something like that. And just describing it, like you'd want to be really circumspect on how you describe it too. Be like, I don't know. You see like this suit of armor and it's moving.
Yeah.
But it's kind of clunky. Yeah. It doesn't seem to be moving quite right. And there's something weird about the skin. It's like it's moving.
Yeah. And then they learn and they get smarter. And so the next one you meet, they're walking a little better. And the one after that is almost, I don't know. I like it a lot.
Or they mimic you. Like they are full on mimics. And so, they just mimic. So at first, like they're walking really weird, but the minute they notice you, all of a sudden every move you're doing, they're doing like, and they're doing it perfectly. Like they're like a perfect mimic kind of thing. Or diving into mimics, more mimics. That just threw out that whole, I forgot. I love mimics. I love adding mimics to everything.
Yeah. So. Tome of Beast has like mimic, snap jaws, like traps that you would set, and they've got like mimic maps and things like all sorts of fun stuff. But
everything you could use.
But what was your bardic inspiration, good sir?
Well, I am reading a wonderful book by Elliot Kay called Wandering Monsters, and it's just a really good book about changing the expectations of being an orc or a gnoll
or
there you
go.
Going
back to that's what we talk about.
That was planned. It was in the notes right then. And I thought it was interesting, the idea that you could play the monster races and you're playing them as the reason they've become adventurers is because they're outsiders in their own societies. And their own societies look at them very strangely because they have strange views and they don't They're not like everybody else. So obviously, what do we do when somebody's not like us? We ostracize them. We bully them. It's the very typical storyline of, oh, you don't do what our community does, so you must be an outsider. You must be an outcast. You must be weird or strange. And we all relate to that, right?
Yeah.
And so then this idea that these outcasts or these people who their own societies are not accepting come together and create their own group, which happens to be an adventuring group. And in this book, it's about an orc, a goblin, a gnoll, a bugbear, and then a human prisoner that they pick up. And they're all just like, they all need each other to survive at this point because everything that's trying to kill them doesn't like them. And they're not bad people. They're not, they're normal people with these monstrous or different bodies. I even say monstrous seems wrong. They're just different, and they're trying to work together. And the book really dives into that whole context. I think that's such a cool, you could run a campaign if you sat with your players and you said, okay, I want to run a monster adventuring group. What's that going to be like? What's it like when you guys walk into town and you're a goblin, an orc, a gnoll, and a bugbear?
Yeah.
And you try to walk into Waterdeep, or you try to walk into wherever. I love this idea of what that's going to be like, and some of the interactions that you can have with that, and some of the ways that you can play around with turning the stereotypes on top of their head. And that's what you're always doing, right? Because everybody is stereotyping somebody else. Everybody says, well, an orc must be like this. And yet you're playing an orc that is not like that. They just aren't. They never were that way. It's not them. And playing a bugbear, that's just very different. I'm not that way. And I just think that was really interesting. So if you want to read a book that really dives into that, you can pick it up. It's called Wandering Monsters by Elliot Kay. I'm reading on Amazon Kindle. But I also thought it was a really cool nugget or a little kernel for a campaign to play. And it's doing the monster campaign, but not the evil campaign.
Yeah, yeah.
Because sometimes people want to say, well, I'm going to do the evil campaign and we'll play evil orcs and evil. We'll dive into the stereotype. But I'm saying book the stereotype and play almost like the Monster Squad adventure group in a world that's humanocentric or elven-centric or dwarven-centric or whatever. And it was really interesting. So it's been really good.
No, it's like the Drow campaign I was talking about a few sessions back, where I want to do the reverse Out of the Abyss, where they're just like, we just want to go home. Like, you guys you're scared of us and you're attacking us because you think we're evil, and they might be evil, but like overall their goal is to just get back to the Underdark kind of a thing. So
yeah. Or just find their place in the world.
I'm just picturing a gnoll bard, and he's got his lute, and he's just like, come on, people, now smile on your brother. Everybody get together and try to love
I just love music.
Another right now.
And all the other gnolls, they didn't like music. They're like, music's not a part of their society. Yeah. But this gnoll loves music.
No, that's really cool.
He was born to rock. So
Ow.
Try that out. So if you guys have your Bardic Inspiration for the week, again, what Bardic Inspiration is all about is just that one little kernel or nugget that you had throughout the week based off of something you saw, watched, read, whatever it was, and you're just sharing it with everybody in case they want to make a campaign based on something like that. So put it in the comments.
Yeah. Lucian, typically on this show, we play a lot of Dungeons & Dragons. Did you play any Dungeons & Dragons this year?
No, I don't. I only talk about Dungeons & Dragons. I don't actually play it. That would be silly. How could I actually do that? No, we were going to have our very last session. So the problem that happens with, we know it's the last session, is you can't just say, well, Bob won't be there, so we'll just go ahead and play. And when Bob gets back, it'll be fine, because everybody wants to be there for the last session. The dungeon master wants everybody to be there for the last session. So the last session has to fit in everybody's schedule. It cannot be, well, we'll just play even though we're down a person or whatever. So because of that, we've got a 2-week gap now where some people were sick. Some people have, they're doing some work stuff. Can't do anything. So it wasn't last week we got to play. It wasn't this week we get to play. It looks like it's going to be February 5th is when we're going to finally get to play the last session. And so, yeah, I've gone almost 2 weeks now without playing any Dungeons & Dragons. That's why I was over on Roll20 looking at games to play, because I was like, I've got no games to play. I should find something to play in that I can commit. And that's the thing. That's the one thing I was sitting and thinking about Dungeons & Dragons last night while I was laying in bed, was that it is a great game. It's a great hobby, but it's not something you can just say 5 minutes from now, I want to play, so I'm playing. It's a very scheduled event kind of thing, right? You have to have people schedules. There's not a way. It's not like computer games where if I say, you know what, in 5 minutes, I'm jumping into World of Warcraft and I'm going to run a bunch of quests. I can do that. I can do that any time of the night. I can do that any time of the day. I can do it whenever I just sit down at my computer. I don't need anybody else. I can do it. And I think that's the one thing that this hobby misses, is that I can't just at any moment of the day sit down and play it. I have to organize it, or I have to find people that are, hey guys, what are you doing tonight? I'm not doing anything either. Okay, let's all get together and play this. It's very.
Oh wait, I don't have anything prepared. Give me like a couple hours to write something. Yeah.
Right.
No, it is structured fun, but I think that's also the charm of D&D,
Sure.
because like for me, I guess it is, and coming from a performance aspect, I always enjoy the magic of theater. And when you watch a play, even a movie, you have a shared experience with the people in that theater and with those actors and things like that. And that's always translated to Dungeons and Dragons for me, where I'm like, what we've scheduled and what we're going to do in the 2 to 3 hours we're going to play right now, this is like magic, and it's just kind of cool. And I think that's really awesome. And that's why it's different than a video game. But you just wait. Baldur's Gate 3 is going to come out. You're going to be so excited. And you'll be able to play.
Well, and your analogy makes total sense to me. And even from I'm not a theater person, but I've heard this from other theater people before, when they're trying to describe the difference between I do theater like you do and I do improv. Now they both happen at the theater a lot of times, and they both happen, it's kind of actors doing actory things in front of an audience typically, but there's something different. They're not the same thing. Right. And I think that's what the improv is that we can just, there's no prep. We just decide to do it and it's done. And the theater is, well, we have to prepare for this. We all have our parts. Somebody's wrote the script. Somebody has made all the cool props, and it's that experience, even though they're both the same. So for me, it's like you said, a computer game is like improv, and then Dungeons and Dragons is like theater production at this point. So in that weird analogy, I guess. So. And so it made me sad that I couldn't just be at 2 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday night and go, you know what, I've got nothing to do. I just want to play a cool barbarian, but I can't just play a cool barbarian at 2 a.m. in the morning.
No, and it's stuff like that. That's how I end up playing or end up building characters, because it'll be 2 a.m. and I'm just like, oh my gosh, an orc druid. And I run and I start building and picking spells. Like the other day, somebody was talking about, well, I'm going to announce it here in a little bit, but this game that I'm going to run, they were talking about using the spell Shadowblade. And I was like, oh yeah, I've never gotten Shadowblade to like work. Like I was trying to build like a melee sorcerer and it just wasn't working.
This is Ted. I saw this tweet by Ted.
Yeah. And so I was like, and then I got thinking about how he was going to use Shadowblade. And I'm like, what if I made an arcane trickster rogue who used Shadowblade? And all of a sudden it fleshed out, and I'm like, now I want to play that character real bad, and this is going to be so fun. But
yeah, he wanted to dual wield a Sunblade and a Shadowblade.
A Shadowblade.
Oh my god, how have I never thought of that? That is so cool.
It's awesome. It's just like light and dark, going crazy.
Yeah, that is such a cool idea. I like it. Why isn't there a spell that lets me do a Sunblade like spell? The opposite of Shadowblade. Can I do a Light Blade or whatever? What would you even call it?
Well, you can't concentrate on 2 spells at once, so that's probably a problem. But
is there any? That was a question I wanted to ask. Has anybody or any rule anywhere out there, any subclass or feat? Is there anything that lets you concentrate on 2 things?
In official Wizards of the Coast stuff, I don't think so. Now, I've played in a game where they gave me a magic item that was like a mechanical owl that stood on my shoulder, and that allowed me to concentrate on 2 spells at once.
Oh, that's right, because the spell that comes from the magic item doesn't take your concentration. So if the item casts the spell, in fact, that's what happens with the Staff of Swarms. You cast Insect Swarm, which is a regular insect swarm spell. but the staff casts that, and it's not your concentration that's holding that. You can concentrate and do something. You can still cast a spell, as far as
well, this was a custom magic item that literally its description was Jordan can concentrate on 2 spells at once, because the idea was that the bird was concentrating on it. But I don't think that it works like that with because you even though you're casting the spell, you're holding on to the staff and the staff is doing the magic, you still have to direct it and control it. So if I was your dungeon master, I would still make you make concentration checks. And it's just the simple fact, you got hit and you dropped the staff and the spell ended or something like that. But that's me. This was a custom magic item that somebody made for me. So I
was thinking it was more innate. I wonder if that's rules out there. Well, if you guys see that rule, I'll have to go look that up.
Concentration and more than one bonus action. People have asked about that too. Like, why can't I get a magic item that lets me take 2 bonus actions? And I remember Jeremy Crawford saying, like, well, it's intentional that you get 1, and it's also intentional that you can't trade your regular action for a bonus action, because there are things you can do with multiple bonus actions that, I don't want to say break the game, but like design wise, it's been very intentional to give you that 1 bonus action. So
right, but then you get to the rogue who has like cunning action.
He still only has 1 bonus action though. He can do more things with that bonus action.
Right, but you get abilities that will let you do bonus action like things. They don't call it a bonus action. They just say you can do that thing.
Okay.
Like the
we're just getting into like rules
the tabaxi
stuff now. Okay.
The tabaxi dash is a racial thing, but it's not a bonus action thing. But you're doing something that like you would normally do with your bonus action, which is get that extra movement. So I think there are little things that let you do some of those things, but you're right. They never say, here's bonus action number 2, or even when they say multi-attack, they don't say I don't think they say action number 2, but like with action surge, you get another action, right? From the fighter.
Yeah.
So they call that a second action, right? Because you don't normally get 2 actions, you get
Correct.
1 action.
Correct.
But with the surge, I think you do get your second. So yeah, I think there's little things like that. I don't know. It's interesting to dive into that, because I know they've always said that their fear is if they didn't have concentration, if you took that away, all of the special effects that are happening from all these spells that are going off will bog the game down and make it too hard to keep track of what's going on. So I totally understand that. And I understand why not letting that happen. But I had just wondered if the item innately casts, like the Ring of Invisibility, if you use the Ring of Invisibility, are you concentrating on invisibility, or is the ring doing the invisibility thing and you're off doing your own thing?
I don't know.
Which is what I was.
It's
so
probably
very interesting.
It's probably it's probably item specific. So
yeah, maybe that's true. Yeah, there's this show I watched not too long ago that had this person asking DMs questions about how it works.
I want your Ring of Invisibility. It gives you the status of invisible. It doesn't cast invisibility on you.
There you go.
So I see what you're saying, but like, and that's just the game and the wording of it and things like that. But yeah, you get the status of invisible. You're not using it to cast the spell invisible, because if you were casting the spell, but.
So I need the status that lets me cast a light blade so that I can then cast the dark blade. That's all I want, Jordan. That's all I'm going.
All right.
So what kind of? I didn't play any Dungeons & Dragons. We got off on that crazy rules
huge tangent. Yeah.
But what did Jordan do in Dungeons & Dragons? He must have played. At least one of the hosts of this show must have played Dungeons.
I played Acquisitions Incorporated. We're coming up at the end of Ac Inc, and I think we have maybe. I don't know. The DM was saying like maybe 1 longish session or 2 shorter sessions left. But if you're familiar with Acquisitions Incorporated and specifically the C team, it's not a huge spoiler, but we're at the end of Ac Inc. We're now in something called the test market. And the test market, I think, is episode 2 of the C team. And they talk about... the test market there. So it's kind of fun if you've watched the C team. We're like playing in the same realm now, which brings up a couple of interesting things. As one of our players has very much loves the C team and has watched a whole bunch of it. So he kind of knows the answers to a lot of the puzzles that we're seeing. which is, I don't know, kind of sad, where you're just like, oh, I don't know, it's not, it's like you read ahead, but he didn't. He's just a fan of the show. So it's kind of interesting. I've seen those episodes, but I was kind of like, I don't remember exactly how they got out of this situation. So I'm just like, whatever. But, and it also got me, I don't play a lot of characters because I DM a lot, but I've gotten very attached to my flame sorcerer. His name is Espen. And I'm now understanding that why people really love playing. Because you do just like, you watch this character grow and evolve in his personality, and Espen has become a snarky reflection of myself, and I love it. And he's been really fun, and I'm sad to see him go.
But it's about to end, right? You're already thinking about, we're going to move on.
And I have other characters I would like to play, but I don't know, part of me wants to do, can we do like an all-star game where everybody picks their favorite character and we jump in and we play them, and that would be really fun. And we'll figure out how everybody knows each other some way, but like he's a really awesome character, and I have a lot of fun with him. My Shadowfell game is, so my dog got out, and like my wife came home and she's like, oh, hey. And I'm like, yeah, I've been watching the baby. And I was like, here, take the baby. And then I start walking through the house and I'm like, where's the dog? And she's like, what? And so long story short, the dog got out and he was missing for like 2 or 3 hours, but a neighbor down the street saw this dog walking down the street and was like, oh, you look like a cute little puppy, and brought her into the house and posted on Facebook, lost dog. It came back to us. We found our dog. Everything's good. But we had to cancel the game because we were out driving around looking for our dog, which, shout out to my D&D group. They all arrived for Dungeons & Dragons. We told them our dog was missing. They all got in their cars and drove around looking for our dog as well. So that was really swell of them to help us.
I've had that nightmare once before, and oh my God.
And
scary.
Yeah, it was super spooky because we love our puppy. But I am working on really cool Githzerai adventures for them because they're in a Githzerai temple in the Shadowfell. And we got to get the Hand of Vecna in there somewhere as well. It's going to be really cool. But we two more things. I want to talk about a new stream show that I'm going to do, and then we have to announce our giveaway winner. But I've cobbled together a team of people. We have Ted from Nerd Immersion. We have Lex from Dank Dungeons. We have Brenna from, well, Brenna's she's popular on Twitter and she's really cool. And we have LB from LB Hack'em who's on a bunch of Indoor Adventurers games, and Danimal, I think, and some other streams, GG. Anyway, she streams a lot. I have got all of those people for a new Wednesday night game, starting in February. I think February 19th is our soft. We're going to start that night. I got to plan a whole bunch of stuff, but we're going to start at level 5. My goal is to do some higher level stuff. So rather than starting at 1, I want to start at 5 and see if we can get to like 12 or 13 or something like that, level wise. And I'm taking an old Greyhawk 2nd edition adventure called The Rod of 7 Parts, and I'm adapting it for Forgotten Realms loosely. And we're gonna do a 8-9 month campaign, and I'm really excited. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We're gonna stream it on Nerd Immersion's channel, and then it'll be archived on YouTube somewhere. So if you guys are interested in that, you should subscribe to, well, first, like me on Twitter, or get in the Saturday Morning D&D Show Discord, because I'll be sure to promote the heck out of it. But we're gonna do Wednesday nights and The Rod of 7 Parts, and it's going to be so much fun. And we're going to have guest stars too. So Lucian, if you're available on a random Wednesday night, we can have you play a really cool character, and you can come on my show. But that is my announcement. I'm really excited for this. Stay tuned for, I've never streamed on, I've done one-shots and stuff, but I haven't done like a long-running campagin, so this will be really
And I'm going to play a bee swarm that is in a suit of armor. He's a bee swarm paladin.
I like it. It's going to be awesome. The Rod of 7 Parts is an adventure that I tried to adapt a long time ago for a 4th edition.
It's a great adventure. Yeah, it's really
fun and lots of cool stuff. And I'm in that struggle though, where they're level 5, and I'm like, how do you guys know each other? How am I going to get this ball rolling? My players are fun and they all want to play a game, so I'm sure they'll just be like, you look trustworthy. Let's adventure together. But I want it to be a little more cohesive than that. And so I'm trying to come up with some backstories and stuff, but yeah.
Create a patron. The way I always try to bring those groups together is there's that overarching figure that says, I would like to hire you to do this thing.
Yeah.
And it's this benevolent, powerful person that needs to do things for them. Beholder would be a good one. Wears a cloak so you can't really see. It just kind of floats.
So it's like a really large guy. But yeah, we're going to have guest stars. It's going to be fun. I haven't worked out all the details yet, but I specifically have 4 players because I wanted a 5th person that I could rotate in as I wanted, as needed. So anyway. So
how long are the sessions going to be?
Like 2.5 hours, I think. So
okay.
Yeah. 2.5, 3 hours. So should be a lot of fun.
5th edition, no special rules, nothing crazy. Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, it's going to be Forgotten Realms specific. So that means no Eberron and no other stuff is the idea. So it should be a lot of fun. So
pretty cool.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner. I recorded myself earlier choosing the winner so that, we'll all know. We had about 100 people go in for the Saturday Morning D&D show 100th episode giveaway for a plethora of stuff that's over there that I can't really reach. I should have had it next to me. I apologize. But we've got metal dice, dice rolling tray, cloth battle maps, inspiration coins, monster tokens, a bunch of cool stuff. I will put this in a box tomorrow and mail it out if the person who won responds to my email. If not, I will draw another one and we'll keep drawing. But our winner, drum roll, our good friend, well, I don't know, actually, it might not be our good friend. I don't know everybody's handles.
Hopefully it's a fan of the show.
Hopefully a fan of the show. Kyle Thorin from Washington, USA. You are our winner. So congratulations, Kyle Thorin. I sent you an email. Check your email. I will give you a couple days to respond. If you do not respond, then I will draw another one. So, but I want to say thank you guys all for entering, and you're awesome. It's wonderful. We had a lot of fun with our giveaway. Thanks again, Dice Dungeons, for giving us
Dice Dungeons are awesome. Go to their website.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of really cool stuff. You should check them out. Yes. They're just finishing up a Kickstarter. It's awesome stuff.
Yeah, their booth looked really cool at PAX, and they're going to be at some of the other big conventions. So
yeah, they sent me a message. They were like, "Are you going to be at Gen Con? We really want to meet you." And I'm like, "I will be." Speaking of Gen Con, I think tickets are this Sunday, tomorrow. Yeah.
Yes.
So you have to buy you don't have to buy your ticket tomorrow, but Jordan does because he wants to get in the housing lottery.
In the housing lottery, yes.
So that I'm not,
if you want to be in
not like
lottery.
8 miles away and like, hitching rides to get there. So, yeah. So congrats, Kyle. Anything else before we go, Mr. Lucian?
That's it for me. It's been another great show, and can't wait to see what we have for the rest of 2020. It's going to be really good. Lots of games, and I'm excited. Yeah. Thanks for joining, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining. I'm very excited for 2020 games, especially for Rod of Seven Parts, and lots of things like Saltmarsh came to an end tragically, and Acquisitions Incorporated is coming to an end. It just seems like it's the start of the year, and like new games and new everything is kind of happening, and I'm very excited for it. So it's going to be awesome. But all right,
all new ideas.
Thank you guys so much. Love having you here. As always, I am Jordan with the silent PH in the middle. That is Sir Lucian at Sir Lucian Gaming. Give us a follow, a like, a share. Tell your friends. Tell your grandma about the show. And
grandmas love us.
Yes, we will see you next week with another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. Goodbye.
Bye.